You might find yourself asking, why am I dealing with things like evil eye or envy or even magic? Does it mean my faith is weak? Am I being punished for something?
Let's talk about a really heavy question, one that a lot of us wrestle with in private. If you're suffering, is it somehow your fault? We're going to get into why spiritual affliction isn't always a punishment for sin.
Okay, let's just dive right in. We're starting with something that's really personal, something we don't often say out loud. When you're going through it, when things are tough, are you the one to blame?
And we can get even more specific. You might find yourself asking, why am I dealing with things like evil eye or envy or even magic? Does it mean my faith is weak? Am I being punished for something? Trust me, a lot of us carry these questions around.
And so often, the answer we get, either from other people or, let's be honest, from that critical voice inside our own heads, is this one. It's this simple and frankly pretty harsh idea. If you're afflicted, it must be because you sinned. It sounds serious, it sounds religious, but man, can it be crushing.
But hang on a second. Before we just accept that, we have to ask a much better question. Is this simple, almost mathematical cause and effect relationship, is that really how Islam explains something as complicated as spiritual affliction?
All right, let's get to the foundational proof here, because this is the part that really reframes the entire conversation. There's one single example from the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that just changes everything.
And that example, well, it's built on a non-negotiable fact. It's a cornerstone of our belief. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was sinless. He was protected by Allah from making mistakes or disobeying. His faith was perfect, his character flawless. Now, you might be thinking, what about this verse from the Quran? But the scholars are really clear on this. This verse isn't saying the Prophet actually committed sins. Nope. It's actually an affirmation of his complete and total purity. It's a statement of incredible honor, not an admission of guilt.
And that right there brings us to the most critical question. If affliction only happens because of sin or because of weak faith, then why on earth was the most pious, most protected human being to ever walk the earth afflicted by an act of magic? You just can't ignore that question.
And the answer, well, it's just profound. The Prophet was afflicted not as a punishment, but as part of a divine plan. It was a teaching moment, you see, designed by Allah to show the entire community how to respond, to set down religious rulings, and maybe most importantly, to prove that getting afflicted is not a sign of moral failure.
So here's the bottom line. The logic is undeniable. If the best of all creation could be afflicted without having sinned, then for you and me, being afflicted is not, in and of itself, proof of guilt. It just completely dismantles that whole argument that suffering automatically equals sin.
You know, this opens us up to a much bigger and honestly a much more compassionate way of looking at things. So let's talk about the real causes of affliction, because Islam teaches us that it's way more complex than just one thing.
The first thing to remember is that everything falls under the umbrella of qadr, the divine decree. What that means is that afflictions aren't just random, chaotic punishments. They are events that happen within God's perfect plan and wisdom for reasons we might not always get.
So an affliction can come through all sorts of different channels. It could be the evil eye, and sometimes that even comes from a place of love, not hate. It can be envy, even if the person being envied is a really good person. It might be the result of someone else's evil actions, like magic. Or it could be a test from Allah, designed specifically to raise your spiritual station and bring you closer to Him.
So knowing why it can happen is one thing. But the how are we supposed to respond? That's just as crucial. And for that, we turn right back to the Prophet's example.
When the Prophet was afflicted, his response was so methodical, so proactive. First, the cause was identified through revelation. Then he sought a cure through Ruqyah. That's the Islamic practice of healing using specific prayers and verses from the Quran, and that ultimately led to his full recovery. It was a clear, step-by-step process. But listen closely and pay attention to what was completely absent from his response. There was no blame, no spiraling into self-pity, wondering, what did I do wrong? And absolutely no delay in getting the proper treatment. The entire focus was on one thing: healing.
So what does that mean for us today? What's the correct approach? It's simple. The goal is, and always should be, healing, not shame. And when you put the two approaches side by side, the difference is just night and day. The harmful approach, the one that blames sin, leads to shame, which causes you to delay getting help, and that just creates confusion. The correct, prophetic approach, it flips that script entirely. It focuses on healing, which means getting treatment right away, and that brings clarity.
So the path forward is balanced, and it's logical. It's actually a lot like how you'd treat a physical illness. Step 1, try to understand the cause of the problem. Step 2, if you do find something you need to work on in yourself, then yeah, correct it. And step 3, go get the right spiritual or physical treatment without waiting around.
So let's be super clear as we wrap this up. Can sin be a factor? Can it weaken a person's spiritual defenses?
Yes, it can.
But, and this is a huge but, it is not the automatic verdict. It's just one possibility out of many, not the default judgment.
And this right here is the principle that should guide us every single time. We have to seek understanding before we ever rush to accuse ourselves or anyone else for that matter.
Because at the end of the day, true guidance is about healing, not crushing your spirit. The real lesson from the prophet's example is a beautiful one. It seeks to remove the heavy burden of blame, even before it removes the pain.